Award-winning author Clifford-Garstang is back on Big Blend Radio with us today, and he's joining us to talk about his brand new novel, The-Shaman-of-Turtle-Valley. Don't you love that name?
Yes, I do.
I know.
I want to go to Turtle.
I know, me too. It combines his international experience and Virginia roots and explores the healing of wounds in families, nations, and landscape, and also challenges the bridging cultural gaps. And we know about that. And he knows about that. He's traveled all over the world, and Cliff was back on our show, we were just saying, about 10 years ago, and very excited to have him back on. His book is out now, so The Shaman of Turtle Valley is out now through Braddock Avenue Books. Of course, you can get on Amazon, all those great places, but I encourage you to go to his website, cliffordgarstang.com. Welcome back, Cliff. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Lisa and Nancy, both for having me. It's so much fun to be back.
I know. I think last time we were drinking champagne, huh?
Yeah, that's right.
That's right. I remember when you first came on, you've got like a collection of stories, and you got me all stuck into your writing, and you've done it again, with both of your books beforehand that you were on, and so good to have you back and writing now. The first one that I remember is In an Uncharted Country, and then What the Zhang Boys Know, but you're going to have to pronounce Zhang correctly for all of us, because know I always get that wrong.
It's a Chinese name, and it's really pronounced Zhang, but that's really hard for people to say, so I'm perfectly happy with Zhang.
Okay, well, it's great because you won a Library of Virginia Literary Award for that collection of stories.
Right, that was such a thrill to be recognized for that book.
And now Turtle Valley, this book, The Shaman of Turtle Valley, what led you to say, okay, I'm going into novels now, the short stories? I know, because you also edited like a series of short story books, too, and anthologies.
That's right. I've got an anthology series. It's up to 3 volumes now. It's called Everywhere Stories, Short Fiction from a Small Planet. And that's been a lot of fun because each volume has 20 stories set in 20 countries by 20 different writers. And that was really a reflection of my international experience. I just really love stories that have something to do with multiculturalism, and so I found all these stories that I really wanted to pull together and put in those books. But the switch to novel writing, I still am writing short stories. In fact, I have another story collection coming out next year. But I read a lot of novels and really liked the idea of taking a bigger look at a bigger picture. Not just the moment in time that you get with a short story.
When it comes to the story that, The Shaman of Turtle Valley, to me, this is like one of those, it should be made into a movie already. That's immediately my mind is like, okay, this is one of those family legacy stories, and where you bring these 2 generations together of Korea and then here in Virginia, right? And that comes from the Scottish descent. And what was so interesting about these 2 families, how while they're so different, they're also so very alike, even in regards to the family structure and just, what their occupations are, things like that, and just even, the strictness of the parents at times, too.
Well, I'm glad you saw that. I mean, that's really one of the things I wanted to show to people, is that even though these are very different cultures, there is a lot of similarity that they can communicate with.
So let's talk about the main characters, and you want to introduce Aiken's family and give a little backbone to that, and then also bring in Soon-Hee and tell everybody about her and her family.
Okay, so Aiken Alexander, he's the current generation of a family that has lived in Turtle Valley, which is a corner of the Shenandoah Valley, for a couple of hundred years. They came in the mid-18th century and have been farming the land all that time. And Aiken is not really fond of the farming life. He'd rather be doing something else, and so he's not really close to his family. And when he graduates from high school in about 1990, he joins the Army as a way to get out. And at first he is posted to the Gulf War, which is 1991, so he serves in Iraq and Kuwait. And then he finds himself in an Army base in Seoul, Korea, where he manages to meet and fall in love with a beautiful very young Korean woman, Lee Soon-hee. And she is from a similar background, as you pointed out. She's actually from a very small village in Korea. Family is farmers, and she's from a conservative background, and one with lots of traditional customs, including shamanism, which becomes relevant in the book. And so they meet and marry and come back to Virginia, and there are, at least at first, lots of problems.
Exactly, yeah. And also death is a commonality between the two of them, is the passing of loved ones and their families.
That's right, and they don't know that at first, but of course he has been grieving over the death of his brother for some time, and soon he also has lost both a sister and her mother. So she understands that kind of loss, and that's something that they share and they can connect with.
Man, this is such a it's epic. I do want to see it in a movie. Do you want to see it as a movie or no?
I would love to see it as a movie, of course.
Yeah, why not?
I know. And the descriptions of the regions are so cool to, just get yourself into these different places. And also when you're thinking about Korea, and this is in a different time frame, but not that long ago, yet you're bringing in history too. So you're going through different time spans with this. And
that's right, because
wars.
even though she is young in the 90s when they meet, she knows about Korean history, and certainly I know about Korean history. And so the fact that there was a civil war in Korea, and of course obviously in Virginia as well, is another point of connection between them. So the history of Korea is also important to this story.
I think the history of Korea is pretty confusing to a lot of Americans. It's kind of one of those things that some people who have served know a lot about, and those who haven't are kind of what? You rarely hear it mentioned anymore.
Or you barely hear about the Korean War, too. That's also just kind of, that's a hidden war almost.
Yeah, it's kind of something that I'm just thinking back to even in different classes and such, that was kind of always left out. That the whole
I think
entire
one
region.
reason, there was a recent novel that was very highly regarded called Pachinko, about it's actually about Koreans living in Japan beginning in the early part of the 20th century. But I think one of the reasons why that was so popular is because most of us don't know a lot about Korean culture. And so it was appealing to people just because it was a way to learn about that. And as you may remember, I was a Peace Corps volunteer in South Korea in the 1970s, and so that's really where my experience with the country began. And I learned a lot about the Korean people and the culture. That was where I was first exposed to shamanism. And I'm certainly not the model for Aiken himself, but in fact, he's pretty clueless about Korea and culture in general. But that's kind of what made it fun to write, because he's learning. The women around him are exposing him to things that he hasn't understood up until now.
Yeah, he's kind of a lost soul in the beginning.
I think so. Yeah, and that was fun too, because it's nice to see characters change in a novel, and I hope people will see that he finds himself somewhat in the book.
I think when the coming of age stories, where people develop their characters and you're growing with the characters you're reading. I think it's important because sometimes life, especially nowadays, when we think about this digital overload that we're in, and how fast-paced and the stress that everyone's living through now, we forget to actually get centered. And stories like this remind you of, what's the meaning of life for you, as an individual. I think they're important, just to get back to our roots personally, and then just with people around us. That there's always something else. There's another layer to every story or to every person, including yourself.
Well, that's a really great point. And Aiken and Soon-Hee too. They're both in need. They are hungry for family, and he. That's really kind of the central theme for me, was that he's building a family. He doesn't quite understand the metaphor that he's using, but he's got these birdhouses that he's building, and that's him trying to make a home for himself and his son.
Nesting.
I think it's interesting when you go to a foreign country how it can totally pull the rug out from under you. And I know when I first went to Kenya, I was so excited. Now, all I could think about was wild animals, because that was why I went. But the cultures and the different tribes and all their different customs was like this huge whirlwind in my brain. I'm like, what did I just see? What did that person over there just do, and why? And I would try to guess why this person did that, and I was always wrong. Until much later, like the third trip, I started to, I understand now. It was really hard to get my mind from being Western. So American, and I had to lose the American brain in order to understand a lot of the things that I saw within the different people.
Did you feel like that when you first went over, when you were in the Peace Corps?
Oh, I totally did. I mean, I was only 21 or 2 when I went, and I had never been anywhere. I mean, I grew up in the Midwest, and I think I had been as far as Arizona. That was it.
Yeah.
So, everything was new to me and different and strange until it wasn't anymore, because I got used to it.
Yeah. Did going over and working with the Peace Corps, did that, because I know that you also worked with the World Bank, and you were part of that development, which is making headlines again. The World Bank is always pops up every few years,
right.
But also became an international lawyer. So do you think it was that experience, and the Peace Corps, and the UN? I mean, I don't know what's going on, but there's pros and people against it all, and I'm like, look, at the end of the day, people are trying to do something. Somebody's trying to do something, right? Something positive.
Right. I mean, I think that's a really good point too. It's a small world, whether we like it or not, and we have these interconnections all over the world, and we can't. I mean, I hate to use the word walls, but we can't build walls. We are all part of one enterprise called Planet Earth, and so I really believe in learning about the rest of the world and interacting with the rest of the world, and that's really what the Peace Corps was about for me, and also the World Bank, because the World Bank was in a position to help poor countries, and so that's what we did, and I think it's necessary.
Well, if you're grounded, I mean, our groundwork is in humanity, whether it doesn't matter what country you come from. I mean, we're all people, and we still have the basic needs. Desires and wants are different than needs. So just from our basic, we have to have clean air, we have to have clean water, we have to have a good food source, we have to have some kind of shelter. We all have that as a need.
Right. It's true. That's that commonality again. What do you think, having been with the World Bank, what do you think of this whole Bitcoin cyber currency thing? Do you think that could be a positive in regards to just trade, just amongst people that may not be connected to like Amazon or something, where it's just, if somebody wants to do business with somebody, in a different country, that could allow that to happen in a easier format.
Yeah, it's possible. I always hate to confess that I don't understand anything, but I don't really understand cyber currencies.
Yeah, me neither.
And the whole blockchain Bitcoin thing. So I can't really comment about that, but for better or worse, the U.S. dollar is still kind of a global currency, and that's how people do business. So I'm not sure that the differentiation of global currencies is really a big concern.
And you brought that up in the book too, because you were talking about when you paid with American dollars, and it's so funny because that is true. Everywhere you go, if it's like here, it's just this. I mean, there's a value, right? But there's also that I got an American dollar. You know what I mean?
Well, that was sort of I'm making fun of him because he's a clueless American, and so he's over there and. And even though Soon Hee is not very well educated either, she thinks it's hilarious that he tries to pay Korean shopkeepers with U.S. dollars. And of course they take it because they know that they can. So
yeah, and I found in Kenya, I thought the Kenyan money was hysterical. I used to call it funny money because you could take like $20 to the bank and walk out with wads of cash. Like this is cool.
It is fun.
And then I had an Indian fellow that contacted me because I had American dollars, and I sold him American dollars and made more than what I got from the bank, and I had no idea I was breaking the law. None whatsoever.
Yeah, really. I was going to say, are you sure you want to confess that on the radio?
Yeah, and then, well, it was a long time ago, dudes. Out there, FBI and all that.
And now you're back in America.
And seriously, I did it, and then I started working for a lawyer in Kenya, and he was like, you do understand that's breaking the law? And I'm like, oh, really? and then I was like, you mean I have to stop?
Yeah,
I was doing so well.
You get to have that naivety, right? That's where it goes.
I didn't know. I mean, nobody told you anything, and the guy had the Indian fellow had an office in the airport in Nairobi. So my American mind meant it must be okay.
Wow.
I mean, he was right
last
there.
year I went to Indonesia, and I had been there many times when I lived in Southeast Asia, but I was doing some research for a new book, and before I went, I dug through my old, I have this envelope with money from various travels, and I had some Indonesian currency, and so I took that with me, thinking, oh, this is a great head start. But in the meantime, they had totally changed the currency, and what I thought was spendable money is now a souvenir or a bookmark or something.
Wow, that's so funny because Nancy and I travel now full time, and we're back on our tour, going to every park we can in America and beyond, and documenting that for one of our other magazines. And it's so interesting because we're packing things away and just like, here, come get our furniture, whatever it is, take it, and we have our little boxes of treasures, and I found all this money, all these coins, money with holes in it. You're like, back in the day where coins meant something, and the notes like the British pounds and things like that, they were so colorful and pretty, and I'm like, okay, so like I want to go back to that money, but I don't know. Like I found shillings and South African rands and all of that, and I'm like, what would people do with these anymore? It's like, why? But I'm keeping my box of money. Well, there's something about it. Yeah, I'm keeping it.
History.
I'm keeping it. It's one of those few things. What I do want to know is, when you talk about South Korea, and I think this is also interesting because they're going through a lot of change now, and it seems that there's a lot of possible unity between South Korea and North Korea, and they're even opening hiking trails up in certain areas right on that border, and it looks positive, but I'm always wary. What do you think about this situation now? Do you think that peace could happen?
I think peace could happen, but I've said that before. When I worked at the World Bank in the 90s, the late 90s, there was a possibility of unification that we were talking about at the time. And although North Korea does not have membership in the UN, they have observer status, and so they're also not members of the World Bank. We had put together a team to plan what to do if reunification happened. And it looked really positive. And then suddenly it wasn't anymore, and there was regime change there, and they got tough again. And so who knows? I mean, it could happen. I hope it does happen, because peace on the peninsula would be really wonderful for that part of the world.
Well, for us too.
You know,
if you're going to talk about nuclear weapons, peace everywhere has to happen.
Yeah, and I think you're right about the walls. I'm not trying to get into that debate, but when you look at the history of the Wall of China and Berlin and all of that, and it didn't work. It doesn't work. And eventually that kind of stuff does crumble down, because I think we've got this DNA in us that wants to connect, and I think we are all connected, now especially. There's people are united all over the world, so I don't think that's going to stop people from uniting. I think we can just keep going and be positive. So you lived over there, you worked over there, you travel. How important do you think it is for authors, if they're going to write this kind of novel, to actually go to the place? Do you think you can get away with not going?
No, I really don't. In fact, when I was writing this, even though not much of the book takes place in Seoul, I was really fortunate to go back to Seoul to visit and to refresh my memory of just what the place smelled like and looked like and the sounds. And I just think the only way to write credibly about a place is to be there.
I agree. I mean, you'd have to. I don't know. It's like painting a picture of somewhere that you've never been. And even though you can get photos and all that off the internet to paint a picture of a place you've never been, there's to me something lacking. Like
it's like painting an animal from a zoo versus seeing it in the wild.
Exactly. That's exactly why I went to Kenya, because I was painting animals in the zoo, and I'm like, they're fat. They don't look like this. Got to go see it.
It's a difference.
Well, it's true. Like a cheetah in the zoo looks nothing like a cheetah in the wild.
And also, when you're writing on the shamanism side, when writing about the mountain spirit, I think because you're writing in her head, you're writing her thoughts, her visions. And I think that you understand, because you're writing in I don't know how to explain it, but you're writing in her dialect in a way, like how people sound. There's
right.
Am I making sense? You're writing.
Well, I mean that's really tricky, and I of course was somewhat hesitant to do that, but I felt like I understood Sun Hee because of the time that I've spent in Korea, having lived there and studied the culture, and I've also studied shamanism, did some research on that in preparation for writing the book. So I felt like I could get inside her head, at least for, maybe I wouldn't be able to write a whole book from her point of view, but having her perspective on some of the things that were happening in the story was important to me. And I lived everywhere, so I don't think I could do it for a lot of cultures, but the places where I know really well, I can do that.
Yeah, you gave her an accent. I think that's really difficult to do in the written word. It's like you can hear her. You can hear her. You know what I mean? And that's a very good quality. I mean, that's an amazing thing to be able to do, to be able to hear her, understand her, and just kind of feel like you're inside her mind and her thoughts and feelings. And I think that's, a lot of times it's, when you look at shamanism, how much of it is really
It's a tricky
subject.
And
yeah, it is. How much? I mean, in Africa, that's what we experience a lot of.
Yeah.
And yet, I feel like these are just really incredibly smart people who know how to tap into a different part of their brain and their body. You know what I mean? Like they understand. They could all be psychologists.
Right. Well, and the fun thing about writing that was, again, Aiken is clueless. He's sort of a typical man who doesn't understand what other people are thinking or doing, and doesn't even realize that there might be something happening spiritually around him that she totally does get, and his mother gets, because of her Appalachian folkways and customs and superstitions. So who knows what's going on? And I think that was really one of the points of the book, was it's not all clear what's happening around us.
But you do that in your books. Your stories, your short stories, I remember them going, there's always this, and Southern fiction does that really well. There's that underlying, what the heck is that, and it's never clear, but it's there, and I read that kind of thing just because it's like there's that extra curiosity where you'll never quite know, but you will keep searching, and hopefully one day we'll know. But you have that element in your stories. There's always that little drop of mystical, like, make you think beyond. Is that something that you're going to continue with on your next, books, and having that little drop in there?
Absolutely. I'm working on a book now that is set in Singapore. It's partly historical and partly contemporary, but at least in my current thinking, there's some stuff going on there that would be hard to nail down. It's a little mysterious.
I had a good experience with a witch doctor, which, I was all excited. My neighbors across the street, when I moved in from the bush into Nairobi, and they invited me to witness this shaman or witch doctor. And
the Druid.
No, not him. This guy, he's all dressed in African garb, and he chants, and he's got like sticks and things with him, and he shakes things over your head. And I was like, first I thought, now this is fun. Then I started to feel just a little bit uneasy. I'm like, I don't know if it's that much fun. And apparently, the lady of the house accused her house girl of stealing. And so they got all these people around, and it was funny because there was 12 people. I always thought that was weird. Had to be 12 people, sat us all around this long table, and he got a bowl of water, and he had this purple powder, and he's doing these dances and waving things over your head. And then he poured the purple powder in the water, and he told us that he was going to see the vision of who was the thief. Now, I know that I wasn't a thief. But all of a sudden, I'm like, uh-oh, what if he sees my picture? Even if I didn't do it, I'm in big trouble. And then, so he does it, and then he glares at everybody around the table, one by one by one. And then they serve you this stale bread, and if you cough, you're the one who did it. I was like, uh-oh.
Wow.
But it was fun, and it was a real eye-opener, because before anybody really could finish the bread, the house girl stood up and said she did it.
Oh, wow.
It was weird, and it still gives me the chills. I'm like, that's power. That man had power, but I think it was more that he was just incredibly intelligent and really good at acting. I mean, it was...
I don't know, or if you believe
he could have been really a good prosecutor.
Yeah, but if you really believe it, you believe it.
Well, I didn't believe it, but I was pretty close to.
Yeah. I mean,
and the girl apparently believed it because it convinced her to confess. So.
Yeah, and maybe she didn't do it. Maybe she just couldn't take the pressure.
Now, Cliff, did you do this in court? I mean, how much of learning shamanism did you use in your international law career?
I wish I had thought of that, but no, I didn't.
I know that'd be a good way of getting.
Glaring when he he'd come right to your face and glare right into your eyes. I'm like, oh man.
Did you like in your travels? Have you ever gotten like spooked that way? Like kind of where, that kind of shamanism, or
freaky.
like would you know what I mean? Where you just get that feeling.
Yeah, I think I have, because I've been in some pretty rural, traditional places in Asia, and stuff happens that it just can't be explained. So definitely get that feeling from time to time.
Wow,
it's creepy.
Well, I'm excited. You got to keep us posted on your next books, and we can't wait to finish The Shaman-of-Turtle-Valley. Everybody, it is really good. It's a delicious read. You're gonna connect. It's you have that. I mean, do you think that writing the short stories helps you be able to do a novel where you get people attached to the book immediately,
right away,
and you're maintaining it? You know what I mean? So that's an important quality, because sometimes writers will go, here's your first chapter, and you're like, man, this chapter is awesome, and then you get to the next one, then it starts to
fizzle,
wishy-washy away. But you really have that knack of getting to the point, yet also painting a really good picture.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. I do think that my experience writing short stories may have something to do with that, because you do have to be concise in the language, and you do have to, as you say, get to the point. And the fact in this book, because although it's mostly about Aiken, I do introduce these other voices of the women in his life, and those are like short stories, really. The experiences that the four women have with Aiken, it was kind of like writing a short story.
Okay, so now if you were going to take, because we're advocates for people to getting out and taking a walk, right? Take a 1 hour walk a day if you can, and just be observant of where you are, right? That's just a thing. And so I would ask you, if you could take a 1 hour walk anywhere in the world with two characters from the book, which characters would they be, and where would you take that walk?
Wow. Well,
I know, right? We don't tell you that you're going to answer this.
Let's see. So there is a man in the story. It's Aiken's father's friend, basically, who lives in the mountain, and this is someone that soon he mistakes, maybe, or maybe she doesn't mistake, for the mountain god. And I think he's a really interesting character. I'd love to get to know him better. So let me take him for a walk, and we could just walk on the Blue Ridge, the Appalachian Trail through the Blue Ridge Mountains, because that's what he knows and he could teach me about. So that's one.
Cool.
And I'm also interested in Soon-Hee's father, who is kind of wrapped around his new wife's finger and does what she says. But I think he's had a rough life himself. He experienced the Korean War, and maybe he and I could go for a walk in the demilitarized zone, and he could tell me what Korea is really about.
I want to go with you guys, and then I want to go to a wine house just because it's called a wine house.
Right.
There's wine houses in this book. This is cool. So that would be awesome. Yeah, I like that. And there is that thing about, the mountain god. I don't want to get into it. I don't want to ruin anything. I know. The mountain god's cool. And that whole communication thing, that's okay. Everybody just go get the book.
Yeah, because, you're treading a fine line here.
Okay, I will shut. Everybody, the book is out now, again, by Clifford-Garstang, The-Shaman-of-Turtle-Valley. It's on Amazon and all those great places. It's published through Braddock Avenue Books. And, of course, go to Clifford's website. It's cliffordgarstang.com, named after Garston, Lancashire, right?
That's
that where
right.
your family comes from? Yeah.
Cool.
Absolutely.
And I think we talked about that the first time. I was like, we used to go to Garstang Beach. And I thought it was in South Africa, and it's not. It's in England. When we lived in England, we went to Garstang Beach.
Funny how the older you get, the more mixed up you get.
Don't look at me that way. In your words, Nancy, my file cabinet gets full.
That's right. My file cabinet's jammed.
I know. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Cliff. It's always a pleasure chatting with you. It's great to reconnect with you and read more of Clifford-Garstang, work. So very excited about it, and look forward to the next book as well. Again, CliffordGarstang.com, and we always like to play music for our guests, and this song is called Sunset. And it's off of the album Backwoods Glance, because we had to go in the mountains and the hills and the woods, because that's what Blind Lemon Pledge does really well with his music. This is really James Byfield, and he goes by the name of Blind Lemon. And you can go to their website, blindlemon-pledge.com. So here it is, Sunset. Thanks so much, Cliff.
Thank you very much, both of you. Appreciate it.
Take care.
Take care.
All of the day I started missing you. That was a day I never forget. When evening fell, I looked at the sky and I saw your face in the sunset. All of a day it came back to me, the way you looked the night I left. The way you cried one lonely tear as I drove away in the sunset. As I drove away in the sunset. I never thought I'd come back through, but now I'm coming to you again. This night ain't leaving without you. All of the day I packed my things. I thought I knew what was best. I always said you can't look back as I drove away in the sunset. As I drove away in the sunset. I never thought I'd come back through, but now I'm coming to you again. This night ain't leaving without you. This night ain't leaving without you. This night, that's how it's gonna be. There's no good me living without you. There's no good you without me. That's how it's gonna be. There's no good me living without you, and there's no good you without me. All of the day I grabbed my coat, I grabbed my keys and headed west. The miles rolled